Your doctor will tell you walking is enough. Your trainer will hand you resistance bands and call it a day. Meanwhile, in parks across China, people in their 70s and 80s are moving through sequences that keep their joints fluid, their balance sharp, and their minds clear well into advanced age. Not complicated routines, not expensive equipment, just 7 targeted exercises rooted in thousands of years of observation about how the human body actually maintains function when most of the world assumes decline is inevitable. Here's what nobody mentions when they hand you a generic senior fitness pamphlet. The exercises designed in the West for people over 60 often focus on isolated muscle groups or cardiovascular endurance, which are valuable, but they miss the integration that prevents the falls, the stiffness, the loss of coordination that genuinely threaten independence. In contrast, traditional Chinese movement practices emphasize fluid transitions, weight shifting, and the kind of whole-body awareness that keeps your nervous system sharp. Research from gerontology centers studying active aging populations has found that people who maintain integrated, flowing movement patterns into their later decades show measurably better proprioception and reaction times than those who only walk or lift weights in static positions. Now I'm going to walk you through 7 exercises that Chinese seniors perform almost daily, usually in the early morning, sometimes in groups, often alone. These aren't acrobatic. They aren't strenuous. But each one addresses a specific vulnerability that appears after 60, and together they form a system that builds on itself. I'll give you the movements in order from simplest to most powerful, and by the end, you'll have a 20-minute routine you can do in your living room or backyard without a single piece of equipment. Before we dive into number 7, understand this. The second exercise on this list surprised me when I first saw the data on its impact on bone density and balance. But the first one, the one Chinese practitioners consider the cornerstone, is so deceptively simple that most people skip it entirely, and that's the biggest mistake you can make. It takes 4 minutes, it requires nothing but a quiet space, and it recalibrates your entire system in a way that makes every other movement safer and more effective. Quick question before we begin. Drop a comment with your age and where you're watching from. I'm curious how far this information is traveling and whether you've ever tried any form of traditional Eastern movement practice. Just age, location, 1 word about experience. Now, let's get into it. Number 7. Shoulder circles with synchronized breathing. Sounds mundane, right? Every physical therapist on the planet will tell you to roll your shoulders. But the Chinese approach adds a rhythm that changes everything. You're not just moving the joint. You're linking the motion to a deliberate breath pattern that resets tension in your neck, your upper back, and even your jaw. Here's why it matters. After 60, the muscles around your shoulder girdle tighten from years of forward posture, from driving, from looking at screens, from protective guarding after any injury. That tightness compresses the nerves that run into your arms and hands, and it restricts the blood flow into your neck and head. You might notice tingling in your fingers, tension headaches, or just a vague sense that turning your head fully takes effort. This exercise reverses that pattern by opening the joint capsule and syncing it with your diaphragm, which most people have forgotten how to use properly. Data from rehabilitation studies on shoulder mobility in older adults consistently show that people who perform daily circular movements through a full range of motion maintain significantly better function than those who only stretch in static positions. The difference isn't small. We're talking about preserved ability to reach overhead, to fasten clothing, to carry groceries without pain. Let me tell you about Margaret, 71, a retired librarian from Ohio who loved gardening but had given up because she couldn't lift her arms above shoulder height without a sharp pinch. She'd been to physical therapy twice, got temporary relief. Then the stiffness returned. I taught her this exact shoulder circle protocol, and within 3 weeks, she was back to pruning her roses and planting bulbs. The key wasn't strength. It was restoring the natural glide of the joint and retraining her nervous system to allow the movement without guarding. Here's the protocol. Stand with feet hip-width apart, knees soft, not locked. Let your arms hang at your sides. Take a slow breath in through your nose for a count of 4. As you inhale, raise both shoulders up toward your ears, then roll them back and down in a smooth circle, exhaling through your mouth for a count of 6. That exhale is crucial. It activates your parasympathetic system and tells your muscles it's safe to release. Do this for 10 circles backward, then reverse for 10 circles forward, always matching the breath. Morning is ideal, but you can repeat it anytime your shoulders feel tight. If your shoulders are very stiff, reduce the size of the circle and gradually expand it over a week or 2. Never force. The goal is fluid motion, not maximum range on day 1. You'll feel the difference in your neck and upper back within minutes. Now here's the kicker. This exercise sets the stage for everything else, because if your shoulders are locked, your spine can't move properly, and that affects your balance and your gait. Which brings us to number 6. Number 6. The crane stance. This is a single leg balance hold, but it's performed with specific arm positioning and a focal point that Chinese practitioners believe stabilizes your inner ear and your entire vestibular system. You're not just standing on one leg. You're training your body to make hundreds of tiny corrections every second, and that's what prevents falls. Here's the brutal truth. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related death in people over 65. The statistics vary by region, but across multiple analyses, somewhere between 1 in 4 and 1 in 3 adults over 65 will fall each year, and a significant portion of those falls result in fractures, head trauma, or a spiral of fear and inactivity that accelerates decline. The problem isn't weak legs. It's a breakdown in the communication between your eyes, your inner ear, and the sensors in your feet and ankles. That communication degrades with disuse, and most people over 60 spend their days on flat, stable surfaces wearing cushioned shoes, which means those sensors go to sleep. Research on balance training in older populations has found that even short daily practice, as little as 2 to 3 minutes per day, can reduce fall risk by meaningful margins within a matter of weeks. The exercises that work best aren't complicated. They're simply consistent, progressive, and done with attention. Carlos, 68, a former truck driver from Texas, told me he'd started feeling unsteady getting out of bed in the morning and had grabbed the wall twice to avoid falling. He was embarrassed, didn't want to admit it to his family. I had him start with the crane stance, first holding onto a chair, then fingertips only, then freestanding. After 2 weeks, he could hold it for 30 seconds on each leg without wobbling. He said the confidence it gave him was more valuable than the physical improvement, though both mattered. Here's how you do it. Stand next to a sturdy chair or counter for safety. Pick a spot on the wall at eye level and lock your gaze on it. Don't let your eyes wander. Shift your weight onto your right leg and slowly lift your left foot a few inches off the ground, bending the knee slightly. Bring your hands to prayer position in front of your chest, or let your arms hang relaxed at your sides, whichever feels steadier. Hold for 10 to 30 seconds, breathing naturally. Then switch legs. If you can't lift your foot yet, just shift your weight so the toe of one foot barely touches the ground. That's still effective. Over time, progress to holding longer and eventually closing your eyes for 5 seconds, which dramatically increases the challenge. Do this twice a day, every day. It's non-negotiable. You'll notice your ankles getting stronger, your core engaging automatically, and a quiet confidence in your movement that wasn't there before. Now, the next exercise takes that stability and turns it into mobility, which is where most people over 60 lose ground. Number 5 coming up, and this one directly addresses the stiffness in your hips that makes getting in and out of chairs a struggle. Number 5, the Taiji squat. Not a full squat, not a chair sit. It's a controlled lowering and rising that teaches your hips, knees, and ankles to work as a coordinated system while keeping your spine upright and your weight balanced over your feet. Chinese seniors do this to maintain the ability to move from standing to sitting to standing without using their hands, which is one of the most reliable predictors of longevity and independence. There's a functional assessment used in geriatric medicine where clinicians ask patients to sit down in a chair and stand back up 5 times without using their hands. The time it takes and whether they can complete it at all correlates strongly with future mobility, hospitalization risk, and even mortality. People who can't do it have roughly double the risk of adverse outcomes over the next several years compared to those who can. The issue isn't just leg strength. It's neuromuscular coordination, joint health, and core stability all working together. Studies on lower extremity function in aging populations consistently find that exercises mimicking everyday tasks, like squatting or stepping, are more effective at preserving independence than exercises done lying down or sitting in machines. The body learns what you practice, and if you never practice getting up and down, you lose that skill. Linda, 73, a retired nurse from Florida, had started pushing herself up from chairs with her hands and thought it was just normal aging. Her knees ached, her hips felt tight, and she avoided sitting on low furniture. I taught her the Taiji squat, starting shallow, and within a month she was sitting and standing freely, no hands, no pain. She said it felt like she'd gotten 5 years back. Here's the protocol. Stand with feet shoulder-width apart, toes pointing slightly outward. Clasp your hands together in front of your chest or extend your arms forward for balance. Inhale, and as you exhale, bend your knees and hips as if you're about to sit in a chair, lowering yourself only as far as feels controlled and comfortable. Keep your chest lifted, your spine long, and your weight in your heels. Don't let your knees collapse inward. Pause at the bottom for a breath. Then inhale and press through your heels to stand back up. Start with a very shallow squat, maybe only 6 inches of descent, and gradually go deeper over weeks as your confidence and strength build. Do 5 to 10 repetitions twice a day. If you feel any sharp pain, reduce the depth. This isn't about how low you can go. It's about smooth, controlled movement through whatever range you have. Your hips will start to feel more mobile, your knees more stable, and you'll notice everyday tasks like getting out of a car or off the toilet becoming easier. That's real-world function. Now, the next 3 exercises shift from lower body to spine and torso. And this is where people over 60 often ignore the warning signs until it's too late. Number 4 is the one that addresses the hidden epidemic nobody talks about. Number 4. Spinal rotation with rooted feet. This is a standing twist where your hips and feet stay fixed while your torso rotates. And it's performed slowly with a focus on breathing and lengthening your spine upward as you turn. In Chinese practice, this movement is believed to massage your internal organs and keep the vertebrae in your thoracic spine mobile, which most people lose entirely by their 60s. Here's what they don't tell you. Spinal rotation is one of the first movement patterns you lose with age, and it's one of the most dangerous to lose. When your thoracic spine, the part between your shoulder blades, becomes stiff, your body compensates by over-rotating your neck and lower back, which are far more fragile. That's how people throw out their back reaching for something or strain their neck checking a blind spot while driving. The twist happens, but it happens in the wrong place. Research on spinal mobility and injury risk in older adults has shown that maintaining rotational range of motion in the mid-back is strongly associated with lower rates of neck and lower back pain. The mechanism is straightforward. A mobile thoracic spine distributes force across many joints. A stiff one dumps that force onto a few, and those few break down. Paul, 66, a retired accountant from Michigan, came to me with chronic lower back pain that his doctor had chalked up to arthritis and age. He'd been doing stretches, taking anti-inflammatories, and getting temporary relief at best. I assessed his spinal rotation and found his thoracic spine barely moved. His lower back was doing all the twisting, and it was angry about it. I taught him this rotation exercise, and within 2 weeks his lower back pain had decreased by half. Within 6 weeks it was gone. He said he couldn't believe something so simple had been the missing piece. Here's how you do it. Stand with feet hip-width apart, knees slightly bent. Place your hands on your hips or let them hang at your sides. Inhale and imagine a string pulling the crown of your head toward the ceiling, lengthening your spine. As you exhale, slowly rotate your upper body to the right, keeping your hips and feet completely still. Your head and chest turn together. Don't crank your neck around further than your torso. Hold the twist for a breath, feeling the gentle stretch through your mid-back and ribcage. Inhale back to center, Then exhale and twist to the left. Do 5 rotations to each side, moving smoothly and never forcing. If you feel any pinching or sharp pain, reduce the range. Over time, your range will increase naturally. This exercise also gently compresses and releases your abdominal organs, which traditional Chinese medicine believes improves digestion and circulation. Whether or not you buy into that framework, the mechanical benefit to your spine is undeniable. Now, number 3 takes that spinal mobility and adds a rhythmic component that most Western exercise completely ignores, and it's one of the reasons Chinese seniors seem to move with a fluidity that defies their age. Number 3. The wave breath with spinal undulation. This is a flowing movement where you stand with knees soft and gently rock your pelvis forward and back, creating a subtle wave that travels up your spine as you breathe in a specific pattern. It looks almost like nothing is happening, but internally, every vertebra is moving through a small range of flexion and extension, and that keeps the discs healthy and the spinal nerves free. Here's why this matters. Your spinal discs, the cushions between your vertebrae, don't have their own blood supply. They get nutrients through a process called imbibition, which is basically a pump and release mechanism that happens when your spine moves and creates pressure changes. If your spine stays static all day, sitting or standing in the same posture, those discs slowly starve and degenerate. Movement is literally their food. Data from studies on disc health and aging indicate that people who maintain regular, varied spinal movement throughout life have significantly healthier discs on imaging compared to those with sedentary lifestyles or repetitive, static postures. This isn't about avoiding disc degeneration entirely, which is a normal part of aging, but about slowing it and reducing the likelihood that it becomes painful or limiting. Diane, 70, a retired teacher from California, had been diagnosed with degenerative disc disease in her lower back and told to avoid bending and twisting. She became so cautious with her movement that she felt stiff and achy all the time. I introduced her to the wave breath, and she was skeptical at first because it seemed too gentle to matter. But after a week, she noticed her morning stiffness was less intense. After a month, she felt looser and more comfortable moving through her day. She said it was like oiling a hinge she didn't know was rusty. Here's the protocol. Stand with feet hip-width apart, knees soft and slightly bent. Place your hands on your lower belly. Inhale slowly through your nose and gently tilt your pelvis forward, arching your lower back slightly and letting your belly expand into your hands. Exhale through your mouth and tuck your pelvis under, rounding your lower back slightly and drawing your belly in. The movement is small, subtle, and rhythmic. Think of your spine as a wave moving from your tailbone up to your head. Do this for 10 to 20 breaths, keeping the motion smooth and continuous. You can do it in the morning to wake up your spine or in the evening to release tension from the day. If you have severe spinal issues or a history of fractures, check with a healthcare provider before starting. But for most people, this is one of the safest spinal exercises you can do. You'll feel your back loosen, your breath deepen, and a sense of fluidity in your torso that most people haven't felt in decades. Now, here's where the routine starts to get interesting. The next 2 exercises, numbers 2 and 1, are the ones that Chinese practitioners guard most carefully because they believe these are the movements that actually extend functional lifespan, not just maintain it. And number 2 is the one that genuinely surprised me when I looked into the research behind it. Number 2, heel raises with deliberate descent. You've done calf raises before. Everyone has. But the Chinese version of this exercise focuses intensely on the lowering phase, where you resist gravity with control, and on a specific breathing technique that's believed to stimulate your kidneys and adrenal glands, which in traditional Chinese medicine are considered the seat of vitality and longevity. Here's what the science actually shows. Eccentric muscle contractions, where the muscle lengthens under tension like when you lower yourself slowly, produce significantly greater gains in strength and tendon health than concentric contractions, where the muscle shortens like when you lift yourself up. For people over 60, strong calves and Achilles tendons are critical for walking, balance, and preventing falls. But there's another layer. The impact and vibration that travel through your bones when you lower your heels back to the ground. when done with control, are a form of mechanical loading that stimulates bone formation. That's crucial because bone density typically declines after menopause in women and more gradually in men, and low bone density is a major risk factor for fractures. Research on weight-bearing exercise and bone health has consistently found that exercises involving impact or resistance, even light impact, are more effective at preserving or building bone density than non-impact activities like swimming or cycling. Heel raises, done properly, deliver that stimulus to your lower legs and feet, areas where fractures are common and debilitating. Robert, 74, a retired engineer from Oregon, had been told by his doctor that his bone density was borderline osteoporotic, and he was at increased risk for fractures. He started doing heel raises every morning, focusing on the slow descent, and after 6 months his follow-up scan showed a small but measurable improvement in his heel bone density. His doctor was surprised. Robert said he'd also noticed his balance was better and his calves felt stronger when hiking, which he'd been nervous about after the diagnosis. Here's how you do it. Stand with your feet hip-width apart, hands resting lightly on a counter or chair back for balance. Inhale through your nose and slowly rise up onto the balls of your feet, lifting your heels as high as you comfortably can. Hold for a breath at the top. Then, and this is the key, exhale slowly through your mouth and lower your heels back down to the ground with deliberate control, taking 3 to 5 seconds for the descent. Don't just drop. Resist gravity. When your heels touch the ground, pause for a moment, then repeat. Do 10 to 15 repetitions twice a day. If you feel steady, you can progress to doing them without holding on or even to single-leg heel raises, which are significantly more challenging. Traditional Chinese practitioners also emphasize tapping your heels down lightly at the end of the descent to send a small vibration up through your legs and spine, which they believe benefits your entire skeletal system. Whether or not you embrace that philosophy, the mechanical benefit is real. Now, we're at number 1, and this is the exercise that I mentioned at the beginning, the one that's so simple most people ignore it entirely. But it's the foundation of everything else, and without it, the other 6 are less effective. Number 1. Zhuang, or standing like a tree. This is a static standing posture where you hold a specific position for several minutes, breathing naturally, and allowing your body to find balance and your nervous system to reset. It looks like you're doing nothing. You're just standing there with your knees slightly bent and your arms held in a gentle curve in front of your chest. But internally, this exercise is recalibrating your posture, training your deep stabilizing muscles, and teaching your mind to quiet down and focus. Here's why this is the most important movement on the list. Every exercise I've given you requires coordination, balance, and body awareness. If your baseline resting state is tense, misaligned, and mentally scattered, you'll struggle with all of them, and you'll be more prone to injury. Zhuang trains your body to find a relaxed, but upright posture where your skeleton does the work of supporting you, not your muscles. And it trains your mind to settle and focus, which improves motor control and reduces the fear and guarding that make people stiff. Research on static posture training and postural stability in older adults has found that practices requiring sustained, balanced standing with attention to alignment can improve proprioception, core stability, and even markers of autonomic nervous system function. These aren't flashy outcomes. They're foundational. They're the platform on which all other movement is built. Joyce, 77, a retired social worker from Illinois, had been struggling with anxiety and poor sleep, and she'd also noticed she felt off balance and unsteady during the day. Her doctor had prescribed medication for the anxiety, which helped some, but she still felt shaky. I introduced her to Zhuang, just 5 minutes every morning, and she thought I was crazy. She said, "I'm just standing here. How is this supposed to help?" But she tried it. Within a week, she said she felt calmer and more grounded, literally and figuratively. Within a month, her balance had noticeably improved and she was sleeping better. She still does it every morning, now for 10 minutes, and she calls it her anchor for the day. Here's the protocol. Stand with your feet shoulder-width apart, toes pointing forward, knees slightly bent as if you're about to sit on a high stool. Don't bend deeply, just soften the knees so they're not locked. Let your pelvis tilt slightly forward so your lower back is neutral, not arched or rounded. Raise your arms in front of you as if you're hugging a large tree. Hands at chest height, elbows dropped, fingers spread but relaxed. Your shoulders should be down, not hunched up by your ears. Imagine a string pulling the crown of your head gently upward, lengthening your spine. Close your eyes or soften your gaze toward the ground a few feet in front of you. Breathe naturally through your nose. Don't try to control your breath, just let it flow. Hold this position for 3 to 5 minutes. Your legs will start to feel the effort. Your arms might get tired. That's normal. Stay with it. If you need to, lower your arms for a moment, then raise them again. Over weeks, build up to 10 minutes. This exercise will feel boring at first. Your mind will wander. You'll want to quit. But if you stay with it, you'll notice a shift. Your posture will improve without you trying. Your balance will feel more solid. Your breathing will deepen. And the other 6 exercises will start to feel easier and more natural because your body has remembered how to stand properly. Now, let's talk about how to put these 7 exercises together into a routine you'll actually do. The order matters. Start with Zhuang to center yourself and set your posture. Then do the shoulder circles to open your upper body. Move into the crane stance to challenge your balance. Follow with the Taiji squat to work your lower body. Do the spinal rotation to mobilize your mid-back. Flow into the wave breath to nourish your spine. Finish with the heel raises to build strength and bone density. The whole sequence takes about 20 minutes. Do it every morning if you can, or at least 5 days a week. Consistency beats intensity every single time. Here's what you need to understand. These exercises aren't magic. They won't reverse decades of inactivity overnight. But they address the specific vulnerabilities that rob people over 60 of independence: poor balance, stiff joints, weak bones, loss of coordination, and a nervous system that stopped paying attention. Western exercise often focuses on strength or endurance in isolation. These Chinese practices focus on integration, on teaching your body to work as a unified system, and that's what keeps people functional and confident into their 80s and 90s. You'll also notice something else if you stick with this routine. Your relationship with your body will change. Instead of seeing it as a collection of aches and limitations, you'll start to see it as something capable, something that responds and adapts. That shift in mindset is as important as the physical changes, maybe more so, because it's what keeps you moving instead of giving up. Let me give you a few more practical tips. First, do these exercises in a space where you feel safe and won't be interrupted. Wear comfortable clothing that doesn't restrict your movement. You don't need shoes. Barefoot or in socks on a non-slip surface is ideal because it allows your feet to work properly. Second, never push into pain. Discomfort from effort is fine. Sharp or sudden pain is a signal to stop and modify. If you have any medical conditions, especially cardiovascular issues, balance disorders, or a history of fractures, talk to your healthcare provider before starting. These exercises are generally safe, but individual circumstances vary. Third, track your progress. Not obsessively, but enough to notice change. Maybe you can only hold the crane stance for 5 seconds on day 1. 2 weeks later, it's 15 seconds. That's progress, and it's motivating. You might also be wondering about other forms of exercise. Should you still walk? Absolutely. Walking is excellent for cardiovascular health, mood, and general mobility. Should you lift weights? If you're able, yes, resistance training is beneficial for maintaining muscle mass and bone density. But these 7 exercises fill a gap that walking and weights don't address. They train integration, coordination, and the subtle neuromuscular patterns that prevent falls and preserve function. Think of them as the foundation. Everything else you do, you'll do better if this foundation is solid. Now let's talk about what happens if you don't do these exercises or something similar. The decline isn't dramatic at first. You'll notice small things. Getting out of a low chair takes more effort. You grab the railing on stairs more often. You avoid activities that require balance or flexibility. Over time, those small compensations become limitations. You stop doing things not because you physically can't, but because you've lost confidence and your body has forgotten how. That's a slow spiral, and it's entirely preventable. Here's the thing about aging that nobody wants to admit. Yes, there are biological changes you can't control. Your joints will show some wear. Your muscles won't recover quite as fast as they did at 30. But the vast majority of what we call aging, especially the loss of function, is actually disuse. You're not falling apart. You're just not moving enough, and you're not moving in the right ways. These 7 exercises are a corrective. They're a daily practice that says, I'm not accepting decline as inevitable. I'm going to maintain what I have and build on it for as long as I'm able. Let me also address a question that comes up often. What if you've already lost a lot of function? What if you're starting from a place where even these simple exercises feel impossible? Start smaller. If you can't stand for Zhuang, sit in a chair with your feet flat on the floor and practice the breathing and arm position. If you can't do the crane stance without holding on, hold on. If the Taiji squat is too deep, barely bend your knees. Every movement can be scaled down to meet you where you are, and the beauty of these practices is that they're progressive. Your body will adapt. It might take longer than you'd like. It might require patience. But adaptation is possible at any age unless you're literally bedridden. And even then, there are modified practices. I've worked with people in their 80s who'd been sedentary for years and regained function they thought was gone forever. It wasn't fast. It wasn't easy. But it was possible. And the determining factor wasn't their starting point. It was their willingness to practice consistently and trust the process. Your body wants to move. It wants to function. You just have to give it the right stimulus and the time to respond. Here's another angle worth considering. These exercises aren't just physical. They have a meditative quality, especially Zhuang and the wave breath, that can reduce stress and improve mental clarity. For people over 60, who often face social isolation, health worries, and the emotional challenge of aging in a culture that worships youth, having a practice that grounds you and gives you a sense of control is invaluable. You're not just exercising. You're creating a ritual that says, this body is worth caring for. This life is worth living fully. You might also notice improvements in areas that seem unrelated. Better sleep, because your nervous system is calmer. Better digestion, because you're breathing properly and moving your spine. Less chronic pain, because your posture is improving and your joints are moving through healthy ranges. These aren't guaranteed outcomes, but they're common ones, and they illustrate how interconnected your body systems are. Fix one thing, and others start to improve. Now let's talk about the social aspect. In China, these exercises are often done in groups in public parks early in the morning. There's a communal element that reinforces the habit and provides social connection. You might not have access to that exact setup, but you can create your own version. Invite a friend or neighbor to do the routine with you. Join a local Tai Chi or Qigong class if one exists. Even just telling someone you're doing this and checking in with each other weekly can increase accountability and make the practice more enjoyable. If you prefer to practice alone, that's fine too. Some people find solo practice more focused and meditative. The key is to find a structure that works for your personality and lifestyle. There's no single right way to do this. The right way is the way you'll actually do consistently. Let me also address cost, because that's a barrier for many people. These exercises cost nothing. You don't need a gym membership, a trainer, or equipment. You need a small amount of floor space and 15 to 20 minutes a day. That's it. Compare that to the cost of physical therapy after a fall or the medications and interventions that become necessary when function declines. Preventive movement is the best investment you can make in your health, and it's essentially free. There's also the question of time. 20 minutes might feel like a lot if your schedule is packed, but consider what you're spending time on. Most people over 60 have some discretionary time. Maybe it's spent watching television or scrolling on a phone. I'm not saying those things are bad, but if you can carve out 20 minutes for movement, you're prioritizing something that will compound in value over the years. A television show entertains you for an hour and it's gone. A daily movement practice builds a body that can carry you through the next decade or two with independence and dignity. That's a trade worth making. Here's a challenge for you. Commit to trying this routine for 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. That's 14 days. Do all 7 exercises in order every morning and pay attention to how you feel. Notice your energy, your mood, your balance, your stiffness. Keep a simple log, even just a few words each day. At the end of 2 weeks, assess. If you don't notice any benefit at all, fine. You're out 20 minutes a day for 2 weeks. But I'm willing to bet you'll notice something, and that something will be enough to keep you going. The people I've seen transform their health and their lives with practices like this all had one thing in common. They didn't wait for perfection. They didn't wait until they had more time or more energy or less pain. They started where they were with what they had, and they trusted that small, consistent actions would add up. That's the only way change happens. Not through dramatic overhauls or New Year's resolutions, but through daily practice that becomes part of who you are. Now, let's talk about progression. Once you've been doing these exercises for a few weeks and they start to feel comfortable, you can begin to add subtle challenges. Hold Zhuang for an extra minute. Close your eyes during the crane stance. Lower yourself an inch deeper in the Taiji squat. Rotate a bit further in the spinal rotation. These small progressions keep your nervous system engaged and ensure you're continuing to adapt rather than plateauing. But don't rush. There's no deadline. The goal is sustainable practice, not maximum intensity. You might also want to explore related practices. Tai Chi, Qigong, and various forms of Chinese martial arts all share the same foundational principles as these 7 exercises. If you find a class or instructor in your area, it can deepen your practice and give you access to a wider repertoire of movements. But these 7 exercises are enough to build a complete routine. You don't need to go further unless you want to. Here's something else worth mentioning. These exercises will not fix everything. They won't cure arthritis or reverse heart disease or eliminate the need for medication. They're not a substitute for medical care. But they can improve your quality of life, reduce your risk of certain injuries and complications, and give you a greater sense of agency over your health. That's not a small thing. For many people over 60, the feeling of losing control over their bodies is one of the most distressing aspects of aging. Reclaiming even a portion of that control through movement can be profoundly empowering. I also want to address fear because fear stops more people from moving than anything else. Fear of falling, fear of pain, fear of looking foolish, fear of failing. These fears are real and valid, but they're also often disproportionate to the actual risk, especially with exercises as gentle and controlled as these. The safest thing you can do is move. The riskiest thing is to stay still and let your body weaken to the point where everyday activities become dangerous. If you're afraid, start with the simplest modifications. Practice near a wall or sturdy furniture, and build confidence gradually. Fear doesn't have to be a stop sign. It can be a signal to proceed with care, not to avoid altogether. Let me tell you one more story. Eleanor, 81, came to one of my workshops using a walker. She'd fallen twice in the past year, fractured her wrist once, and was terrified of falling again. She was also convinced she was too old and too fragile to do any kind of exercise. I persuaded her to just observe the first class, and by the end she agreed to try Zhuang, standing next to a chair for support. She could barely hold the position for 30 seconds without shaking, but she kept coming back. Week after week, she practiced. Her standing time increased. Her balance improved. After 6 months, she didn't need the walker indoors anymore. After a year, she was walking unassisted around her neighborhood. She's now 83, still practices these exercises every day, and hasn't fallen since she started. She told me she wishes she'd found this 20 years ago, but she's grateful she found it at all. Eleanor's story illustrates something critical. It's never too late. Your body retains the capacity to adapt and improve well into your 80s and beyond, as long as you give it the right stimulus. The changes might be slower than they would have been at 50, but they're still real, and they're still valuable. Now, let's circle back to the bigger picture. Why do Chinese seniors, as a population, seem to maintain mobility and independence longer than many of their Western counterparts? It's not genetics. It's not some miracle herb or secret diet. It's the daily practice of integrated movement that starts early and continues throughout life. In parks across China, you'll see 70 and 80-year-olds performing exercises that look gentle but require balance, coordination, and body awareness that most Western seniors have lost. They're not exceptional. They're just consistent. The cultural difference is striking. In much of the West, there's an assumption that after a certain age you're supposed to slow down, take it easy, avoid anything that might be risky. That protective instinct, while well-meaning, often backfires. By avoiding challenge, you accelerate decline. The Chinese approach embraces a different philosophy. Movement isn't seen as optional recreation. It's seen as essential maintenance, like brushing your teeth or eating. You don't skip it because you're tired or busy. You do it because your body requires it to function properly. This doesn't mean you have to adopt an entire cultural framework, but you can borrow the principle. Make movement non-negotiable. Build it into your daily routine, so it's not a decision you make each morning, but a habit that happens automatically. Link it to something you already do. Maybe you do Zhuang right after your morning coffee. Maybe you do the shoulder circles while waiting for your tea to steep. Maybe you do the crane stance while brushing your teeth. Habit stacking works because it removes the friction of remembering and deciding. You'll also find that once movement becomes a habit, it starts to feel good in a way that makes you want to continue. The initial resistance, the mental bargaining about whether you really need to do this today, fades. You start to notice that on days you skip, you feel off. Your body misses it. That's when you know the practice has taken root, and that's when the long-term benefits really start to accumulate. Here's another practical tip. Set up your environment to support your practice. Clear a small space in your home where you can move freely without tripping over furniture or clutter. Maybe put a yoga mat down or designate a specific corner. When the space is ready and waiting, you're more likely to use it. If you have to move furniture and hunt for room every time, the friction increases and consistency drops. You might also want to set a reminder on your phone or put a note on your bathroom mirror, something that prompts you until the habit is established. After a few weeks, you won't need the reminder anymore. It'll just be part of your morning, like your coffee or your shower. Now let's talk about what to do when you hit obstacles, because you will. You'll have days when you're tired, when your joints are stiff, when motivation is low. On those days, do a shortened version. Maybe just Zhuang and shoulder circles. 5 minutes total. The goal isn't perfection. It's consistency. Doing something, even a minimal version, reinforces the habit and keeps you connected to the practice. Skipping entirely makes it easier to skip again the next day, and that's how habits unravel. You'll also have days when pain flares up or you feel genuinely unwell. On those days, rest. Listen to your body. The difference between discomfort from effort and pain from injury is something you learn to recognize with practice. But when in doubt, err on the side of caution. One day off won't derail your progress. A week off because you pushed through an injury and made it worse will. If you have chronic conditions like arthritis, diabetes, or heart disease, these exercises can often help manage symptoms. But you need to approach them intelligently. Arthritis, for example, often benefits from gentle movement that keeps joints mobile without overloading them. Diabetes management improves with regular physical activity. Cardiovascular health is supported by the kind of low-intensity, breath-focused movement these exercises provide. But individual circumstances vary, and working with a healthcare provider who understands your full medical picture is important, especially when starting something new. Let me also address the question of whether these exercises are enough on their own. For some people, yes. If you're doing this routine daily, and staying generally active with walking, gardening, or other everyday movement. You're covering the basics. For others, especially if you have specific goals like building significant strength or training for an activity, you might want to add resistance training or other targeted exercises. These 7 movements are a foundation. What you build on top of that depends on your individual needs and interests. Here's what I want you to understand most clearly. Aging does not have to mean decline in function. It doesn't have to mean dependence. It doesn't have to mean giving up activities you love. Yes, there are changes. Your recovery might be slower. You might need to modify how you do things. But the narrative that 60 or 70 or 80 means you're done, that you're just managing decline until the end, is false. It's a story we've been told so often that we believe it, but it's not supported by what actually happens when people move consistently and intelligently throughout their later decades. The Chinese seniors performing these exercises in parks every morning aren't genetic outliers. They're not lucky. They're disciplined. They've made a choice to prioritize movement, and their bodies have responded. You can make the same choice. You have the same biology. You have access to the same exercises. The only question is whether you'll commit to the practice. I'll be honest with you. The first week will feel like a chore. You'll wonder if it's worth it. You might not notice any immediate change. Push through that week. The second week will be slightly easier. By the third week, you'll start to notice small things. Maybe your balance is a bit better. Maybe your shoulders feel looser. Maybe you just feel more alert in the morning. Those small changes build. Give a month, and the changes won't be small anymore. Give it 3 months, and you'll wonder why you didn't start sooner. Here's the reality. You're going to age whether you do these exercises or not. The question is how you age. Do you want to age with strength, balance, confidence, and independence? Or do you want to age with fear, limitation, and increasing dependence on others? The choice is largely within your control, and it comes down to how you move or don't move every single day. These 7 exercises are a tool. They're a specific, proven tool that addresses the vulnerabilities most people over 60 face. But they're not magic. They require your participation. They require 20 minutes a day and the willingness to show up even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. That's the price, and it's a bargain compared to what you get in return. Let me paint a picture of what consistent practice looks like over time. In the first month, you'll notice improvements in balance, flexibility, and how you feel day to day. In the first 6 months, you'll notice functional changes. Tasks that were difficult become easier. Confidence in movement increases. In the first year, those changes solidify. They become your new baseline. After a year of daily practice, you're not just maintaining function. You're operating at a higher level than you were when you started, possibly a higher level than you've been at in years. And here's the beautiful part. Once you've built that foundation, maintaining it takes less effort than building it did. The practice becomes easier, more automatic, and more enjoyable. You're not grinding through a workout. You're moving through a routine that feels good and that you know is serving you. Now, I want to come back to the concept of integration because it's central to why these exercises work. Western fitness culture often isolates muscle groups. Chest day, leg day, bicep curls, hamstring stretches. That approach has value, but it misses the reality of how your body functions in daily life. You don't use isolated muscles. You use patterns. Walking is a pattern. Standing up from a chair is a pattern. Reaching for something on a shelf is a pattern. These patterns require coordination between multiple joints, muscle groups, and neurological systems. When you train patterns instead of parts, you build functional capacity that transfers directly to everyday tasks. That's what these 7 exercises do. They train patterns. Zhuang trains the pattern of upright, balanced standing. The crane stance trains the pattern of single-leg balance. The Taiji squat trains the pattern of controlled lowering and rising. The spinal rotation trains the pattern of torso turning with a stable base. The wave breath trains the pattern of spinal mobility. The heel raises train the pattern of ankle stability and bone loading. And the shoulder circles train the pattern of upper body mobility linked to breath. Together, they cover the fundamental patterns that maintain independence and function. If you only have time to do one exercise from this list, make it Zhuang. It's the foundation. It's the one that recalibrates everything else. But if you can do all 7 in sequence, you're giving your body a comprehensive reset every single day that compounds over time in ways that are hard to overstate. Let me also touch on breathing, because it's woven through all of these exercises, and it's something most people do poorly without realizing it. Shallow chest breathing, where your shoulders rise and fall but your belly doesn't move, is a stress response. It activates your sympathetic nervous system and keeps your body in a low-grade fight or flight state. Deep diaphragmatic breathing, where your belly expands on the inhale and contracts on the exhale, activates your parasympathetic nervous system and tells your body it's safe to relax, repair, and function optimally. Many of these exercises explicitly cue breathing. The shoulder circles match breath to movement. The wave breath is built around the breath cycle. Zhuang emphasizes natural, relaxed breathing. This isn't coincidental. Proper breathing enhances the effectiveness of every movement and trains a skill, diaphragmatic breathing, that improves your health and stress resilience all day long, not just during exercise. If you find yourself holding your breath during any of these exercises, that's a sign you're straining or tense. Pause, reset, and breathe naturally. Movement should never require you to hold your breath. Breath and movement should flow together. Here's another insight. These exercises don't just train your body. They train your attention. In a world full of distractions, where most people over 60 are bombarded with news, screens, and demands on their time, having a practice that requires you to focus on your body, your breath, and your movement for 20 minutes is a form of mental training. You're practicing presence. You're practicing the ability to notice what's happening in your body without judgment. That skill has applications far beyond exercise. It helps you recognize when you're stressed, when you're tired, when something doesn't feel right. It makes you more attuned to yourself, and that awareness is protective. People who practice mindful movement tend to catch injuries or health issues earlier because they're paying attention. They notice when something feels off, and they address it before it becomes a crisis. That's not paranoia. That's intelligent self-monitoring. And it's a valuable skill at any age, but especially after 60. Now let's talk about expectations, because unrealistic expectations are one of the main reasons people quit. If you're expecting to feel 20 years younger after a week of practice, you'll be disappointed. If you're expecting to never feel stiff or achy again, you'll be disappointed. Aging brings real changes, and no exercise routine reverses time. But what you can realistically expect is gradual, steady improvement in function, confidence, and quality of life. You can expect to feel more capable, more stable, and more in control of your body. You can expect to maintain independence longer than you would have without the practice. Those are realistic, achievable outcomes, and they're more than worth the effort. You should also expect setbacks. You'll have a week where you miss a few days because life gets in the way. You'll have a day where the exercises feel harder than usual. You'll have moments of frustration. That's normal. Progress isn't linear. It's a jagged line that trends upward over time. The key is to not let setbacks derail you. Get back to the practice as soon as you can, without guilt or self-criticism, and keep moving forward. Here's a question to ask yourself. What would your life look like in 5 years if you did nothing differently? If you continued on your current path with your current level of activity, what would your mobility, balance, and independence look like? Now ask yourself what your life could look like in 5 years if you did these exercises every day. Which version do you prefer? That's not a rhetorical question. Sit with it. Visualize both outcomes. Then make a choice. The truth is, most people underestimate how much control they have and how much difference consistent small actions can make. They assume their trajectory is fixed, that aging will happen to them in a certain way, and there's nothing they can do about it. But that's not accurate. Your trajectory is influenced by your daily choices, and movement is one of the most powerful levers you have. Let me also address the people who are thinking, I'm already doing fine, I don't need this. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're one of the people who's naturally active, who moves well, who has no issues with balance or stiffness or strength. But I'd still encourage you to try these exercises, because they offer something different from what most people are doing. They offer integration, attention, and a framework that's been refined over centuries. Even if you're doing well now, building these skills can be insurance against future decline. And honestly, there's no downside. 20 minutes a day of mindful movement will only make you better. For those of you who are struggling, who feel like you're starting from behind, I want to be very clear. This is for you. These exercises meet you where you are. They scale to your current level. And they work regardless of your starting point. The person who's been sedentary for a decade might see more dramatic improvements than the person who's already active, simply because there's more room for gains. Don't let embarrassment or shame about where you are keep you from starting. No one is judging you, and your body doesn't care about your past. It only cares about what you do from here forward. Here's a final piece of advice. Find a way to make this practice enjoyable. Maybe you do it while listening to music you love. Maybe you do it outside on nice days. Maybe you do it with a partner or friend. Maybe you just enjoy the quiet focus of the practice itself. However you can add a layer of pleasure or satisfaction, do it, because enjoyment increases adherence. If the practice feels like punishment or obligation, you'll eventually quit. If it feels like something you look forward to, even a little, you'll stick with it. And remember, the goal isn't to become an expert at these exercises. The goal is to do them consistently and let them do their work. You don't need perfect form. You need regular practice. You don't need to understand every nuance of traditional Chinese medicine. You need to show up and move. Keep it simple. Keep it consistent. Trust the process. So here's where we are. You now have 7 specific exercises, a clear protocol for each, an understanding of why they matter, and a structure for putting them together into a daily routine. You have stories of real people who've used these practices to reclaim function and confidence. You have practical tips for building a habit and overcoming obstacles. What you do with this information is up to you. I've given you the map, but I can't walk the path for you. Only you can do that. And the first step is always the hardest, because it requires you to make a decision and to commit even when you're not sure it'll work, even when you don't feel motivated, even when it would be easier to keep doing what you've always done. But here's what I know. If you take that first step, if you try this routine for 2 weeks with genuine effort, something will shift. Maybe it'll be physical. Maybe it'll be mental. Maybe it'll just be the satisfaction of knowing you're doing something proactive for your health. Whatever it is, it'll be enough to keep you going. And that's all you need. Small steps, repeated consistently, create transformation. So let me leave you with this. You're not too old. You're not too far gone. You're not incapable. You're simply untrained in the specific skills that maintain function after 60. And that's fixable. These 7 exercises are the training. They're a gift from a culture that's been figuring out how to age well for thousands of years. Accept the gift, use it, and watch what happens. Which of these 7 exercises will you try first? And what's one thing you're hoping to change about how your body feels or moves?